Hello and welcome to the Farmhouse Podcast. We're a small-scale farm operation in the outskirts of Brooklyn, Wisconsin, interested in veggies, flowers, livestock, and honestly, whatever it is our family ventures into next. It's a learn from experiences kind of journey that we're on, and this podcast will share some valuable stuff happening in our area. Let's talk a little bit about your small-scale operation, what you're into, and how it works for you. Happy you're joining us for this episode of the Farmhouse Podcast. All right, what's up? Here we go. Episode 3 takes us to Cox Hill Farm, where Caitlin and Reed Cox are operating a pasture-raised poultry and pork small-scale farm operation. I spent a spring evening in April on the farm to meet them both and check out their place. The timing of the visit allowed me to see the brooder setups full of birds, the chicken tractors placed and ready in the pasture, and the young pigs happily trotting about in their pen. As Caitlin and Reed showed me around, the kids were actively trying to be my tour guide too, and you could tell they were very proud of everything they had on their farm. I felt lucky to be getting the authentic Cox family farm tour. Raising poultry and pork has turned into the focus for Cox Hill Farm, and they go about it in a way to get the most nutritious and flavorful meat, while paying close attention to the pastures that they let the animals graze on. It's a regenerative agriculture practice that is extremely beneficial for the animals as well as the land. Caitlin and Reed are only a few years in with their small-scale operation, so it's impressive how much they've already done on the land and the growth their farm business is generating. It was a wonderful visit and a great conversation. Even Reed, who right up front disclosed his nervousness for interviews, did an amazing job sharing his insights. The handful of resources mentioned throughout the podcast will again be linked on the Farmhouse website. I hope you enjoy episode 3, all about Cox Hill Farm. Welcome, Caitlin and Reed, and thank you for being a guest on the Farmhouse Podcast, and also for welcoming me onto your beautiful farm. Appreciate your time tonight on this beautiful spring evening to share a little bit about you guys and what you have going on. So to start, if you can just give us a brief overview of your place, the location, the size, operations, and kind of what you offer here.
All right. Well, thank you for coming out and doing all this. We're really excited. So we have a small farm here. It is 41 acres, and some of it we have taken over. Some of it is still in leased land that we eventually will take over, but we are raising poultry. We have some broilers, some turkeys, layers. We've gotten pigs this year. And we are currently trying to ramp up our production with about, 900 chickens we're trying to raise?
A little over 900 this year.
Yep.
And 60 turkeys.
60 turkeys and 5 pigs.
Cool. And we are in Brooklyn?
Oh, yes.
Is
Brooklyn,
it
Wisconsin.
Greene County or Dane County?
We are Greene County. We are just across the line.
Cool. And the size you said of the total acreage?
41 acres.
And you're operating, I think we talked a little bit when we walked around.
Yeah, less than 10. It's about 5 acres of pasture that the poultry's on. And the pigs are on probably 2 right now. That'll grow as we take over more of the crop ground. But right now it's really pretty small acreage that we're using.
Cool. And can you share just a little bit about both of you and kind of how you ended up doing what you're doing here on this farm?
So it was always kind of a dream to move out to the country when we met and got married. We've been married almost 10 years-ish, but it was something that we always thought was far-reaching, and we pulled on both of our knowledge. Reed is a mechanic, I'm a teacher. I've been really into food, he's really into food. We wanted to grow more connected to where our food comes from, and once we kind of learned the nutritional benefits as well, it was kind of the area we wanted to go. And we had the idea of in a couple years we'll buy small plot of land in a couple of years, and we just happened to keep our eye on things, and things just fell into place in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, and we really used to be focused more on like the homesteading side of things, growing as much as we could for our family. And we were always kind of having the goal of finding like a 3 to 5 acre homestead. And we got super fortunate that we were able to get a bigger piece of property. And then it kind of clicked that, hey, maybe this can be more than just for us, right? Maybe this can be extra to sell. So now it's sort of shifted into more small scale production farming rather than homesteading. And we've kind of given up some of the homesteading things that we enjoy to make time for the farming. We used to make syrup, and we did more vegetable production.
I think though the mindset has shifted as well. Like the idea of being able to provide this type of meat and product to our community, the improved taste that we get to experience, we want to share that with others, and the added benefits of the pasture raised on the animal itself as well.
So you've been on this property for
Since
COVID
June 2020.
That's exciting. So,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say? I think, did you start with that whole homesteading in mind, where it was just going to be kind of for your family, provide for your family? And we're only 3 years from then, so it's kind of grown quickly.
Yeah. So our first year, we just got as many broilers as the local store had, and then the following year, we're like, okay, well, we're gonna ramp this up. And we did, and then the hatchery sent us 100 more birds than we ordered. And so I just remember being on the phone with Readers during the summer. I was home, and he's like, we don't know what they're going to do with those birds if we don't take them.
We kind of had to.
So luckily the kids were in summer school, and I just spent the morning trying to get anything ready for an additional brooder that we just had not planned on. And we're like, well, what are we going to do with these 100? Let's see if people want them.
And then that kind of started the whole selling.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, then we ramped up, from where we had intended, with the thought of if these don't sell, we'll eat them. It's not the end of the world. We're a family of 5. We're big eaters, so we had the freezer space. It didn't seem like that big of a risk.
Sure. Well, it's kind of exciting. You're kind of thrown right into
it.
Pretty good.
Sure were. Yeah.
So you have meat birds, you have layer birds, and you mentioned pigs. I think you mentioned turkeys too. Yep. Any kind of rationale with kind of the choice in those particular livestock?
The chickens were pretty easy to start with because they're low infrastructure, low cost, low risk, and everybody likes chicken. So that was kind of a no-brainer for why we started with them. And it actually started with the egg layers before we got the meat chickens. We had some egg layers at our old house. It was about 1 acre. We had like 6 of them or something.
And just for your own family?
Yeah, just for us. And then from there, we thought, well, let's try turkeys. Since we kind of had chickens somewhat figured out, it didn't seem too daunting to stick with poultry, to go with turkeys, which went pretty well. We used to raise them in a tractor like we do the chickens, which now we raise them differently where they're in a net so they can range a little bit more. And then now that we feel pretty comfortable with those enterprises, we're ready to get into pigs. We sell to a couple farmers markets. Pork sells really well, especially grilling season. Everybody brats and pork chops. So this is our first year with pigs. We just have 5 of them.
Do you plan on selling those?
Yeah, these will probably get processed all into cuts. The timing is not great for us because, these are going to be processed in the fall. But the farmer's market season is just about over then, by the time we get the stuff.
Can you talk a little bit about the pastures here? I know you have the idea of the regenerative kind of pasture. Can you just kind of explain that a little bit and kind of your approach with pasture maintenance and how you
Yeah,
manage
so we want to make sure that our livestock, our animals, are outside as soon as they can safely handle the elements. And in doing that, we got to make sure that they are in a safe structure, depending on what they are, whether it's the net for the turkeys or a partially enclosed tractor for the chickens to make sure they're safe from predators. And then depending on the animal, we move them daily or twice a day or in a few days, depending on what their needs are, to make sure that they have fresh forage, fresh grasshoppers, crickets, as they go around.
Yeah, we really want to build the soil. And so this kind of intensive management of grazing things and then moving them off and letting it recover with the manure left behind is what we're doing. So we're hoping to build soil and organic matter to, there's a whole bunch of benefits it gives. But the biggest thing we struggle with here is drought right now. This land does not seem to tolerate drought well. I think mostly because of the low organic matter. Mm-hmm. So as we can improve that, the pasture will become more resilient to these weather conditions that are going to be unavoidable in the future. Mm-hmm. So that's really our approach, is keeping these animals moving onto fresh grass, and it keeps them more sanitary too, because you get them off of their droppings to fresh grass in front of them that they eat, but also it's their bedding. Mm-hmm. So that cuts down on the parasite load, and that's why we don't need to use antibiotics or any of these other medicines, because they're always on that fresh pasture.
And it's really cool to see after you move the chicken tractors, you look back a couple moves prior and you see the land recovering quickly and beautifully. It's all green and lush. So you're really seeing the effort that you put in.
Yeah, that's great. Can you talk a little bit about the tractors? I am unfamiliar with kind of what those structures look like and how they function. So can you explain those a little bit?
Yeah. So these tractors that we use, they're designed by a guy named Darby Simpson. He's got his plans online, and we've just modified them a little bit for our setup. But it's just basically a 10-foot by 12-foot rectangle that's made out of wood on the bottom, and we use cattle panels to make an arch over the top. And then there's a tarp over part of it to keep them dry. But everything is contained inside these tractors. So our chickens will stay in there, and we'll keep moving the tractors themselves with the birds in it daily or multiple times a day, depending how big they are. And the tractor holds the water, holds the feed. Everything is self-contained into it. And so they're predator proof, when they're on ground without big gaps underneath the sides and things like that. And they've worked really well for us. So we have 5 of them right now. One of them we use as a brooder, hopefully not for another year. Hopefully we get a bigger brooder at some point. But they work really good for us. I like that these are heavy, where we don't have to worry about the wind tossing them around in big windstorms. We've never had one move. We don't have to stake them down. But being that they are heavy, they are, hard to move. So we move them with the UTV. It's got a winch on the front. And since the UTV is in the field anyways every day to bring feed out, it's not a big deal for that machine to be out there to use that winch to move the tractor forward, so we don't have to lift it. It's a little bit slower, but that chicken tractor moves so nice and smooth that we don't run the risk of running birds over on the back of it, and we can actually be on the inside of it, helping to push those birds forward as we move that tractor.
So you mentioned a family of 5, and you both, I'm pretty sure, have full-time day jobs. You have your family, and then you also have this pretty massive farm operation going on here. And just curious, the balance and how you kind of make it all work, if you can share some of that.
Well, it's hard. It's not easy.
Farm comes first.
But yes, we both have full-time jobs. I'm a teacher. He's a mechanic. We have 3 kids, an 8-year-old soon, and twins in kindergarten. And so it's a lot of juggling. One of us will be inside making dinner while the other is outside doing chores, and the kids are all over. Sometimes it's one of us running a kids to activity, the other one's here getting stuff done, planning. And then there's a lot of times that we're both up after the kids go to bed working on stuff. Maybe Reed goes to the shop, maybe I'm on the computer doing something online. But it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of balance, and it's a lot of communication.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but on our tractor and on our UTV, there's lights all the way around it. We do an awful lot after dark. Get the kids to bed and then go finish up whatever it is we're working on. If we didn't, I don't think we would be able to function. It still seems like we struggle balancing the farm and the family. It's a lot. Some days are certainly harder than others, but we seem to make it work. Caitlin really holds that all together and keeps me in check that, hey, the kids need to eat lunch at some point, which has been helpful.
It's a interesting dynamic. A lot of what we're doing, and we're similar in our operation, right? The whole lifestyle on a small scale farm is so valuable for the kids, right? Because they see all of those really important values, hard work, and kind of know where their food's coming from, and the importance of the animals that you're consuming and the land that you're caring for.
Yeah.
All of those really valuable things, but it is a lot of work, and it costs money to make it work too. So
yes, it does. And we've had to let go of some of the things around the farm that we find more fun or more enjoyable. So like this year, to keep our sanity, we're scaling back the garden a little bit, and it's just a garden for us, and the kids love it. So this year we're only planting the stuff that really the kids will just go out and have their own snack.
Let's transition a little bit to kind of the business side of the farm. I'm curious, you have a really cool website. I'm curious how you kind of ended up on that particular host for the website, and then you're processing payments online too. How you kind of landed on Stripe, if you can share some of that. Because small business operations are tricky. So
they're very tricky. And with that being said, I think we're going to be transitioning to a different platform that works more for how we want to use the farm, being that we do retail sales and CSA. It's hard to find some of these platforms that can really handle both types of that. We found that you can really find one that can do one or the other. And so we're going to transition again, which is building the website again, building the store again, building everything again. But it's been a learning process. There's a lot more behind the scenes than you realize when you get into farming. I think I spend a lot of time in front of a computer, more time than I assumed I would, be it emails or working on invoices and ordering, processing different things, inventory, just a lot goes into it. And so it's been kind of trial and error, really. And we've lucked out with some things like, Stripe and things like that have been working really well for us. But we've also done a lot of learning recently in farm marketing and how it's very different, and a lot of farmers aren't as versed in it. So we're trying a lot of those techniques, and it's a lot of planning online content before, we never thought about that.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was going to be so much time required for everything that Caitlin just talked about. I would say that the non-farm, what you think of as a typical farm job, the non-farm stuff takes more time than the actual farming.
Yeah, it's interesting.
At least right now, where we're trying to build our customer base, trying to figure out social media, how we should use that as a tool. It really takes a lot of time, and I did not expect it to be so time consuming. So we're excited to switch platforms to a new website. I think that's going to once Caitlin gets it all figured out, I think that's really going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to save some time,
Cool.
which will be nice.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do offer? You mentioned the CSA and also some retail. What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have a whole chicken CSA that we usually do 2 whole chicken CSAs throughout the year, the summer and the winter. And then we also will do an egg CSA, kind of early spring egg CSA. So when the egg production ramps back up again, and then a summer egg CSA. Then aside from that, we have retail. We'll sell retail, whole chicken, chicken cuts. We have pork right now that we sell from a farm outside of the Madison area that has similar practices as us while we're ramping up our pork production. And then we also go to farmers markets. We'll be at 2 different farmers markets this um, summer. We'll be at Belleville Farmers Market and Paoli Farmers
Cool. Do you have expanded? I mean, so your CSAs, are they delivery or are they pickup?
Both.
Markets, okay.
So we offer delivery and pickup. Delivery does have a small charge just to cover our costs. And then you can pick up at the markets, at the farm. We also have a Fitchburg pickup. And then I forgot to mention, we also have turkeys that we are taking deposits for right now. But we hope that we'll be able to offer some turkey cuts eventually as well. But we're limited on that option from the processor.
Yeah, and the CSA has been so awesome because, a small farm like us, we have problems with inventory management in the freezers and cash flow up front to get everything rolling for the season. So the CSA has been so good for, lessening some of those burdens.
Mm-hmm.
People pay up front for the season. That helps us buy our feed, our chicks, because we have to pay for everything up front before we have a product to sell, right? So we're paying for the chick, we're paying for the feed, we're paying for the processing, all of these things. It gets expensive. So that was the whole reason with offering the CSA, is to have some of that cash on hand at the beginning of the season to get us up and running. But then also just, to manage that freezer space, we are always short on freezer space. Luckily now we have a big walk-in freezer, but even that, we still need to know that some of this product is going to be out by a certain date, so that we have our next batch that can go in there. So really we want to grow the CSA. That's really where we want to be. It's growing the CSA.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is that your kind of primary source just because it's more stable and predictable versus the retail?
It is. And I think the other added benefit is the connection to the member. I see people in the community and say hi because they're one of our members that have been with us now for years. A lot of repeat people. And I think they also appreciate watching us grow and how the farm grows, and excited to see what we're going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
But that connection to the community, I think that's more than money to me. It's showing our community what we're doing and getting their support.
Yeah, that's cool. I think the CSA movement, at least within the last 5 or 10 years, has been really booming and definitely helps out the small scale farmer for sure. Just the last kind of topic question. You mentioned your small veggie plot just for kind of your own family consumption. Do you have anything else kind of going on the property as far as like, fruit trees or nuts, or you mentioned syrup collecting? Are there any other things like that you're either venturing into or kind of doing now?
Yeah, we're hoping we planted a few nut trees last year, some chestnuts and some hazelnuts, and we want to continue doing that in the future pig pasture. So we're really hoping it's going to be a pretty diverse bunch of fruit and nut trees, with the idea not for us to sell that stuff, but that we as a family can eat what we want off of it, and then whatever we don't harvest will drop and the pigs will harvest. Is really what we want to do with that. That's going to take some years before we get that stuff planted and producing.
I think the other things that we want to do is keep adding those trees and things, but it's planting them like in harmony with the land. So not necessarily these rigid lines, but kind of seeing how the land moves and planting with it, as long as it works with rotating all of our meat that we have. And I think for me, some things I'd like to see us do in the future, whether it's next year, 5 years, 10 years, I really want to get more people to the farm. I don't know what kind of event it's going to be, whether it's a farm to table dinner, a pumpkin picking, or family day, or something. But I want people here. I want them to experience what we experience. I want them to see where their food is coming from, and I want them to be a part of the process. And of course, I would love to have sheep and maybe a donkey and some more stuff.
All right, we're getting a little bit big at that point, but I guess you have
Little bit.
40 plus acres eventually.
There's enough space.
I had one more question before we move on to the next section. The pig pasture versus the layer, or like the meat bird kind of tractor idea. They're a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is. They
Rototillers.
They definitely churn up that soil and pasture quite a bit more than the birds would. I'm just curious do you have any kind of plan in terms of how you're going to rotate to keep those pastures?
Yeah, so they're going to look different than where we have the birds. And so we will not be mixing the meat chickens on the pastures where the pigs are. They're probably going to be in dedicated pastures because they are going to tear it up a little bit. That's what they do. So they're going to be in paddocks that'll be rotated every 7 to 12 days to keep them moving. They're going to, like I said, tear it up. But if we give it enough rest, hopefully it should recover enough before it gets animals back on it again.
We are going to transition into the next section of the podcast that I have deemed or titled Rapid Fire Questions.
Oh boy.
These, you're welcome to just kind of brief, quick answer, or you're welcome to explain a little bit more of the answer, but I have 5 or 6 of them to see what information we can get out of you. So the first one, most important tool or piece of equipment for a small scale operation like you have going on here?
UTV. Or a husband.
I would say a really good headlamp.
Yeah.
Every night we're doing chores after dark, maybe only for 5-10 minutes, but we have some really nice headlamps, and that would be what I would recommend.
Awesome.
That is a good one. I will say, whether it's him or myself that go out, sometimes you're out there for half an hour and it's dark.
Good one. Number 2, your go-to source to get your chicks or your turkey babies.
We have been going to a local hatchery, and we'll be going to them this year too because they're booked. We've had a lot of issues, so we're going to be doing something different next year. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
What kind of issues do you, just birds that come that aren't
It's just
alive?
communication. It's, sending us 100 more. They've also sent to the local farm center, sent 12 layers that then no one had. And so then the farm center called us, do you want 12 more layers? Mixing up dates.
Yeah, this year they
mixed
kind
up
of
some
screwed
dates
us
on
over
us.
on our dates.
So we're going to look somewhere else, but we prioritize trying to stay as local as possible. So we're just going to keep trying different things and try to keep everything as close as possible.
The biggest issue we have is, we got a lot of stuff going on. We need everything in an email, right? Because that's what we're going to go back to and reference. Hey, what were our dates for that third batch of, whatever? Well, if the hatchery won't take email for booking dates, if it's just on the phone and they write it down and I write it down, or Caitlin actually.
Yeah.
And for some reason those dates don't jive in 2 months, that's a huge problem. Our processing dates cannot fluctuate with the way things are right now. We book 8 months in advance for some of these. So if the hatchery bumps us 2, 3, 6 weeks, that's not going to work. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, number 3, your go-to source for your feed.
Once again, local as possible. So we are going out of Broadhead. Yeah, Broadhead. Being able to fill our grain bins in one go, so they're here for a couple hours in the morning, fill everything, and trying to keep it in our area.
Yeah, we used to have bagged feed, and we were buying it by the pallet, and it was okay, but we had so much plastic waste from the
Mhm.
bags. They're not recyclable. Um, we did not want to do that any longer. So it's nice that the bulk feed, you know, you get a price break on it also, but it's really nice to not have to deal with the bags, right? So now we can put the buckets right under the grain bin, fill them up, throw them right in the UTV, and off we go without having to worry about any bags at all. And this is way more rodent proof too, because previously we just had pallets of feed in the barn, which gets really hot. So I think everything about this bulk feed system is for the better, but that's not a real great option if you're not at a certain scale.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm assuming those were pretty pricey to get.
Yeah.
But
These ones we got used, you know, you can find them used for $500, but
Mhm.
Setting them up and getting them and finding them,
Sure.
traveling with them, and having Reed try to have me be his help for getting them set.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And I didn't realize this with the first one we bought, but it needed one piece replaced, which, oh, not a big deal. It's a piece of tin, you know, how bad could it be? Well, it was $600 for all these pieces, you know,
Sure.
so now I got $1,100 into this bin. It's great. It's still well worth it, but that was something I didn't expect. Kind of a lesson learned that
Mhm.
if you buy a used bin that needs some work, make sure that company is still in business so you can get parts for it. Yeah.
Sure. All right, number 4. Best breeds for meat birds, layers, or turkeys.
Yeah, we raise Cornish cross for the meat birds, which is the industry standard for meat chicken. What really makes it different is the way we raise it. But we've been really happy with the Cornish cross. They have their issues. You got to manage them properly so that they don't have these health issues as they get a little bit bigger that they're notorious for. Um, but they've worked really well for us. We like the growth rate. You know, we take ours about 7.5 weeks. Um, and the layers, we have kind of a mixed bag right now. I think there's a reason why there's commercial breed layers as well, right? Because our lay rate has kind of been all over the board. So the next ones that we do will probably be like Isa Brown, something that's really consistent, and we'll probably trade those out every year, I would think.
Just to keep the laying production
Yep.
consistent.
To
every
keep
year
them
or
up.
two, probably. And then, I mean, the downside is you don't get, the rainbow color of eggs in
Mhm.
your carton, which I enjoy. But
What do you have right now in your laying flock?
we have all sorts.
Barred Rock, Rhode Island Red. There's some Australorps.
There's some kind of mix Easter eggers.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's probably 10 breeds.
And you have an egg CSA too, right?
Yep. So we are able to provide eggs to people once a month during the summer. That some of it's delivery, some of it's pickup, but there's a lot of people that buy multiple dozens of eggs that then get delivered right to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the nice thing about the CSA is, we really want these kind of products to be a staple in people's house. And so the CSA is really geared towards that. And so we've got, a bunch of people that are buying 4, 5, 8 dozen eggs at a time, which makes us feel good because that's obvious at that sort of quantity that this is their main egg in the fridge.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. 5th rapid fire question. Your preferred way to prepare and eat a whole chicken?
Well, I would say that varies, but usually for us, honestly, chicken is like our quick and easy dinner. It's usually when we have lots of stuff going on and one of us gets home and puts some seasoning on it, puts it right in the oven. But I think our preferred way would probably be spatchcock on the grill.
Yeah, or brined and smoked.
Yeah.
There's really no going wrong with that.
And then the soup from that carcass, when you boil it down, is amazing. But we like to have multiple meals out of our chickens. So we'll usually do 2 at once and then make something with the leftovers, put everything in a pot for stock, and then, try to use everything that we can.
Mm-hmm. Great. Last rapid fire question. Book or publication that you reference or you've read to get a bunch of information from, or you would recommend someone small scale farming similar to kind of what you're doing here?
Yeah, we're big followers of Joel Salatin. So Pastured Poultry Profits would be our number one. We've read it several times and we keep referencing it even now.
Yeah, it's like a good textbook. It's not a textbook, but it has a ton of information. With that being said, too, we even went and visited his farm last summer, so that we were able to get a tour there, and that was.
And he's pretty big, right?
Yeah,
Big scale.
he's Polyface in Virginia, so we road tripped out there to see family, and then stopped by there for a tour, which was awesome. It was so cool to read so many of his books and then see these things in action. It was really cool.
Awesome. You would say the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It has all of the information. I lean more towards some of like the foodie type of books. So right now I'm reading Omnivore's Dilemma, and then listening to a lot of podcasts, and I tend to listen to the farm marketing podcast. So my Digital Farmer has been my go-to lately.
Awesome.
Well, that kind of wraps it up. I don't have anything else on my list to ask or to prompt with. So I just want to say thanks again for your time today and for having me out on your beautiful farm. Are there any parting words or last tidbit of information you want to share?
No, we appreciate you coming out, asking the questions, and kind of hearing our story. And, the way we do things is making sure that we have happy animals on healthy pasture.
And a happy family.
And a happy family. It's important.
Well, thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed this episode and got a few takeaways from it. Let us know if there's a small-scale farm operation you know of that could be a good fit for our podcast. Thanks for being part of our journey. Till next time, peace out.